Boston before the Revolution. A city on the edge of the world. Boston did not always look like the city we know today. Long before highways, skyscrapers, and neighborhoods stretched inland, Boston was something far more fragile. In the 18th century, it was almost an island, surrounded on nearly every side by water, connected to the mainland by a single, narrow strip of land. From above, the city looked as if it were floating, tethered loosely to Massachusetts by a thin thread of earth. In the 1770s, places we now consider central parts of the city simply did not exist. The Back Bay was not land. It was open water, part of the tidal basin that rose and fell with the sea. Twice a day, salt water surged in and out, reshaping the shoreline and reminding Boston's residents that their city lived at the mercy of the tides. This was a place defined by water. The harbor was not scenery. It was life itself. The ocean fed Boston, connected it to the wider world, and just as easily could cut it off. The city felt exposed, vulnerable, and deeply dependent on forces it could not control. Seen from a distance, Boston appears tightly packed. Brick buildings and wooden houses cluster together near the shoreline, church steeples rising sharply above them like needles. The structures huddle close, as if bracing themselves against the cold Atlantic winds. There is a sense of pride in the skyline, but also isolation. Boston in the 1770s was small by modern standards, yet it was already a place of enormous importance, a distant outpost of the British Empire that would soon become the epicenter of a global transformation. The narrow lifeline. Boston Neck. To understand how isolated Boston truly was, you must pass through Boston Neck. This was the only land route into or out of the city. Today, this area is Washington Street, one of Boston's busiest corridors. But in the 18th century, it was a thin, muddy causeway barely rising above the surrounding marshland at high tide. Seawater spilled over the road, flooding it completely. During storms, the path could become impassable. This narrow strip of land was Boston's lifeline. If it were cut, the city would be trapped. At the far end of the neck stood the city gates, marking the entrance to Boston proper. This was not an open city. Entry was controlled. To walk into Boston was a deliberate act, one that carried meaning and consequence. Nearby stood the gallows. Placed in clear view of travelers, it served as a grim reminder of authority and punishment. Justice in colonial Boston was public and uncompromising. The presence of the gallows reinforced the seriousness of law and order in a frontier city that could not afford disorder. The air here would have smelled of salt marsh and wet earth. Mud clung to boots. Insects hovered over stagnant pools. The scene feels quiet, even haunting, a stark contrast to the roaring traffic and crowded sidewalks that occupy this space today. Long Wharf, where the world arrived. Moving into the heart of the city, we arrive at Long Wharf. This was the engine of Boston. Stretching far into the harbor, Long Wharf allowed large ships to dock directly beside the town. In engravings from the period, the masts of ships are packed so tightly together that they resemble a forest stripped bare by winter. It is difficult to see the water beneath them. This was where Boston met the world. Imagine the noise, the groan of timber as ships pressed against the docks, the crash of barrels rolling across wooden planks, sailors shouting in multiple languages, merchants arguing over prices, dock workers hauling cargo under the weight of the day, tea from China, spices from the Caribbean, sugar, rum, molasses, textiles, gunpowder, letters and newspapers carrying news from London. Everything passed through this wharf. The buildings along Long Wharf rise close on either side, forming a narrow corridor that pulls you inward toward the city. There is no wasted space here. Every inch is used. Boston was not a city built for beauty. It was built to function. Trade was survival. Without it, the city would starve. King Street and the symbol of authority. At the center of town stands the old State House, anchoring the intersection of King Street. In the 1770s, this building represented British authority in the colonies. It is solid and elegant, its brick facade more refined than the wooden shops surrounding it. On its roof stand the lion and the unicorn, symbols of England's monarchy, watching over the city below. The scene on the street feels orderly. Carriages roll slowly along the road. Men in powdered wigs and tailored coats walk beside women dressed in fine silk. It is a city attempting to maintain the appearance of British civility. But appearances can be deceptive. These cobblestones had already witnessed bloodshed. Just a few years earlier, British soldiers fired into a crowd here, killing 5 civilians in what would become known as the Boston Massacre. The tension never truly left this street. Even in moments of calm, the weight of history presses down. The city feels like it is holding something back. The occupation. Red coats in the streets. That restraint shattered with the arrival of British troops. What you see next is not simply a city. It is a garrison. Red-coated soldiers flood the streets, their uniforms bright and unmistakable. They march in formation, muskets on their shoulders, drums echoing between the buildings. Boston is no longer just a colonial town. It is an occupied city. Nowhere is this more visible than on Boston Common. Once used for grazing cattle, the open green space has been transformed into a military encampment. Rows of tents stretch across the field. Smoke rises from cooking fires. Soldiers drill in formation. There are no families here, no leisure. Only order and discipline. Local residents watch from the edges, careful and silent. The presence of the army is a constant reminder of control. The city feels tense, constrained, watched. Boston had become a symbol of resistance, and Britain responded by placing it under guard. Faneuil Hall, where commerce met rebellion. Near the waterfront stands Faneuil Hall. Today, it is remembered as the cradle of liberty. But in the 1770s, it was also something more ordinary, a bustling marketplace. Fishermen arrived at dawn with their catch. Farmers brought produce from the countryside. Merchants haggled over prices. The lower floor buzzed with daily life. Above it all, in the meeting hall, voices rose in argument. This was where ideas circulated, where frustrations were aired, where discussions of taxes, trade restrictions, and political rights grew louder with each passing year. Here, commerce and politics collided. The same people buying fish downstairs were debating resistance upstairs. The boundaries between daily life and revolutionary thought blurred. In the shadows of this building, conversations changed history. Beacon Hill before the city shaped it. The skyline of early Boston is difficult for modern eyes to recognize. Beacon Hill, now a polished neighborhood of brick townhouses, was once steep, rugged, and imposing. It loomed over the city, its slopes uneven and wild. At its summit stood a beacon pole. In times of danger, it could be lit to warn the population of invasion. The hill functioned as both lookout and shield. Homes clustered cautiously along the lower slopes, while the upper ground remained bare. From this vantage point, Boston appears small and exposed, pressed between land and sea. The city was still fighting the landscape, cutting hills, filling marshes, reshaping the earth to survive. A city strangled, the harbor blockade. By 1774, Boston's lifeline was severed. In response to the Boston Tea Party, the British government ordered the harbor closed. Warships sealed off the port. Trade stopped overnight. The scene is eerily quiet. Ships sit idle at the docks. Their sails are furled. Ropes hang slack. Warehouses are locked and silent. The water lies flat and still, reflecting a gray, empty sky. Without trade, Boston suffocated. Dock workers lost their jobs. Merchants went bankrupt. Families struggled to survive. The blockade was not just punishment, it was economic warfare. The energy that once defined the harbor vanished, replaced by waiting and anger. The North End. The calm before war. In the North End, the city appears almost peaceful. The Old North Church rises above tightly packed wooden houses. Its steeple cuts sharply into the twilight sky. Below, the streets twist and narrow, unlit and quiet. There are no street lamps, only moonlight and the faint glow of hearth fires. It looks like a sleeping town. But we know better. Eyes are fixed on the church tower. Signals are being prepared. Messengers wait in the darkness. The city is holding its breath. Soon, 2 lanterns will shine from that steeple. Soon, the alarm will spread. Soon, the war will begin. A city on the edge of history. These images remind us that the American Revolution did not unfold on grand stages or in empty fields alone. It happened in real places, in muddy streets, on crowded wharves, inside wooden houses and brick halls, among ordinary people living ordinary lives. Boston in the 1770s was a city of contrasts, order and rebellion, tradition and change, fear and determination. It was a small town grappling with an idea so powerful it would reshape the world. Standing on the edge of land and sea, Boston stood on the edge of history. Thank you for walking through the streets of early Boston. If you enjoyed this journey, stay connected. There are many more lost cities and forgotten moments waiting to be rediscovered.